Okay, I think we're good to go. So we're going to have Russell involved, and we've got Andrea with the tweets as well. So we've got lots of questions coming in. So why don't we go first to Twitter and see what questions have come in? Anyway, sorry.
Okay, I'll start with a very easy one for Stu. When is the next Cyber Scotland Connect meetup?
Excellent. 23rd of May. Sorry, I should have put this on the slides. I'll tweet them out. If you follow SEC Scotland on Twitter, all the dates on there. So yeah, 23rd of May. Thanks. Thank you for asking.
Okay, I've got one for Kirk as well. Question is, are phone manufacturers trying to avoid mic blockers purposefully?
I don't think so. I just think they're just. I don't think that's the case. I think they're just moving where the market wants to go, and that's from analog to digital. And it's probably been a process that's taken a little longer than it should have taken, actually.
Okay, I'm just going to ask one or two, and then we'll open up to the floor if that's okay. So Saoirse, you at one point mentioned about making a decision and moving on, and Matt, you talked about not losing focus. But I'm just interested, we always talk about the pivot, and it can be quite an overused word. I'm kind of interested to know if at any stage, any of the four of you had to go through a major pivot and had to kind of go back on a decision that you had made at a point in time. So, any volunteers to go first?
It's an excellent question, and we talk. Persevere or pivot is that classic kind of model. I'm going to flip it and say some companies do make the big pivot. Yeah, we make micro pivots all the time. Yeah, and I think the sort of Spotify model of fail fast, learn quick, fail fast. That for me is how it should be. So make a small experiment, fail fast, pivot quick. And if you find yourself doing a massive 90-degree pivot after a year's experimentation, you're kind of doing something wrong.
Okay. Any other takers?
No, I completely agree on the micro pivot. I think you're going to be in that mode for a while. But yeah, if you're kind of flailing all over the place, then maybe kind of take a step back. So just to echo that point.
Perfect. Kirk or Stu, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, so we got forced into pivoting in terms of redesigning things altogether, but I think it's just a natural thing that's going to happen. You're dealing with a whole lot of outside forces and internal kind of requirements that keep shouting at you, so you're going to have to keep moving and be agile. I think that's the key thing, is just being agile.
Yeah, one of the most difficult things I find in security is strategizing anywhere beyond 6 months or so, because the industry changes so much, the products change so much. We do OKRs in 3-month bursts, and it's all agile and 2-week sprints and things. And yeah, there is a pivot point at times, but yeah, it's subtle rather. But sometimes when I retro a year apart or 2 years apart, the journey is completely. Or we might have shifted in a very different direction.
That's great, thank you. So one last question for me, and then, as I say, open to the floor. So one of the challenges I'm aware in cybersecurity is often that customers don't always realise they need you until something happens. So there must be a huge part of just educating customers and making sure that they're aware of why they need you before they do actually need you. So I don't know if anyone wanted to kind of cover the challenges of that and how you have to really focus on that awareness and education in the first place.
Can I start?
Yeah, go for it.
So this is why we try and do all these community type things and try and spread learnings. We're not here as security people to scaremonger businesses into doing things. I had a chat through there with somebody about, we get that the money has to go somewhere else to start with, and it can be a long time into your journey before you're able to invest in security. But if we can, as an industry, try and help non-security people or other businesses into the journey and learnings, then that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, I think too you have to push on an open door. With compliance, there's probably a sector where they just don't care, and they're trying to get away with as little as possible, and they just don't buy into it at all. And so that's not the focus. You're not trying to turn around someone and have an argument. If there's somewhere you can improve what they're doing, great. But yeah, and completely changing someone's mindset takes a lot of effort. So you've got to weigh up is that worth it? So you can be on a mission, but just focusing your energy where it needs to be focused.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I'm from a marketing perspective, so this is product development is a new kind of experience for me. So I've been taking it very much in a way of how do you show people. It's a difference between advertising and marketing, I think of it. If you know advertising, you're just spending tons of money and lots of effort trying to convince people that they need what you're making. Or you can take a marketing perspective and think, well, what do people actually really need? They might not even realize that they need it yet, but you produce what you have you put some research into it, you find out what they actually really need, and you produce that, and then you say, hey, look, and then it's that a guttural reaction is, oh yeah, I need that, and that's when you have it. So I think we have that certainly with what we're doing, and
I think I'd echo your points, Stu. One of the things that the cybersecurity business or industry has been terrible at is selling fear, uncertainty, and doubt.
yeah.
FUD. So we go out there and we try and scare people into buying products. We don't try and educate them all too frequently. We're trying to tell them. And I've likened the sort of product we have as almost like an insurance product. And people don't like being sold insurance frequently. You're kind of going out there and telling people you're going to have an awful illness, you're going to die soon, you're going to have a horrific crash in your car. That's not the way to sell stuff, but it's the way people try and sell security. And what happens is people switch off, and they don't care, and they don't want to talk about it. So if everyone tried to sell car insurance in terms of you're going to have a really horrific crash and whatever, no one would want to talk about car insurance. It's a thing you have to do, but I think we need to get a bit more positive about it all and a bit more kind of, these are the good things it can bring you. And it's not as hard as other people keep saying, and there's some real positives and some small steps that you can take. And I think that would change the way we approach cybersecurity.
Just to add to that, I think, why should it just be businesses? So when you leave your company at 5:30 in the afternoon, why should that be the end of thinking about security, or not? We're all on the internet, we all use mobile phones, our data is everywhere. My wife's married to a cybersecurity person, and she's still got on her notepad all of her passwords on her notepad on her phone. I can't get her to use LastPass. So if the challenge is, even if I can't do that in my own personal life, then it makes it even more difficult from a business point of view. So I think trying to encourage security in our daily lives should then translate into business at some point.
That's good, thank you everybody. Okay, any questions from the floor? I'll go to Mike.
Could you say who you are? What's your question, please?
My name is Karim. I'm from a startup based here in code-based called Alex App. My question is for Matt from a business perspective, and I'm referring to your 3 exits. You referred to the lucky LinkedIn message. I believe in luck, but I think there's so much luck can do for you. And my question is, how can you position yourself as a business to receive that message? Because I don't think it's pure game.
It is an excellent point. So your point was, is it really just luck? And the answer is no. So the reason they found me on LinkedIn is because we had a great web presence, we had really targeted marketing, etc. So they had found our firm. Fortinet had decided that they wanted to get into the machine learning driven cybersecurity space. So they went out there and looked for that, and they found us. And on the back of that, they contacted a couple of key members of the team, and I picked it up. So you've kind of got to have a presence of where people can find you, certainly, and you've got to have people who are smart enough, and not just me but others, who are smart enough to recognise what it might be and take it forward. So empower people to, if you've got a key team, empower people to move. And when Fortinet contacted me, I was able to step forward and convince the board, we should go with this and follow this up. So luck is an add-on to hard work and smart people.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Oh, Andrew.
Hiya, my name's Alex, I'm product R&D lead at Amicus. We're a legal tech startup. I was kind of interested, I think it was Matt who talks about how there's not a one cybersecurity product that fits all. You've got to pick the right one for the right problem. Can you talk a bit more about why there wouldn't be a sort of sky scanner for security?
So it's a good question. If I was looking to buy a computer, I wouldn't go to Skyscanner. Skyscanner I like a lot, and I think they're really good at what they do. And I think it's exactly that. It's recognizing what someone's strength is and using them for that strength. If I have an antivirus product, I'm not going to use it for some other sort of random cybersecurity purpose. I recognize what it's good at, and I use it for that. What I have an issue with are the cybersecurity companies who come along and sell you the fear, uncertainty, and doubt, and then try and tell you, by the way, my product's a silver bullet to solve GDPR, to solve insider threat, to help protect against viruses. You know, it's just cloud cuckoo land. So if you have a specific need, you are likely to find a specific product that fully fulfills that need. If you go out there with every cybersecurity product, every cybersecurity problem you might have, and hope one product will fulfill all of those, you're not going to find them. No.
Yeah, to echo that, I would say establish what your main risk is from a cybersecurity point of view. What is it that your company will fall on its backside for if it loses? It's probably data. That's what it is for a lot of companies, personal data, and look in those areas. There's a staggering amount of product out there. It's very difficult as a security person to even understand all the things that are out there, and it is also, a lot of it is kind of snake oil stuff because companies are trying to make money. Given that there's someone like Matt in the room, this probably isn't the greatest of answers. The open source community is incredible in tech. The answer is not always buying something that's on the market, as far as I'm concerned. We leverage quite a lot of open source in the companies that I've worked for. It comes with its own complexities and issues, but the answer is not always what the market from a buying point of view is providing.
Yeah, I would.
But risk. Go after you.
So I would echo that point. I mean, you know, we use OWASP, the open source web standards, and there's a good reason for that. I use a bunch of open source products at home because they have that open source. People can inspect them. People can see how they work. So yeah, again, it's pick the right tool for the right problem. Work out what your problem is, what your greatest risk is, and then find the tool to meet it. Don't just go out there and believe someone coming along saying we're the best cybersecurity product in the world.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think there's some, having been client side or corporate side for a while, there's also the onus on them to make sure that they know, so that what they want is that, as an old agency person, it's that old classic of it, you have to be able to write a good brief. Speaking to an AI business recently, they're just walking away from those companies that come and say, we want AI. Can you give us AI? Yeah. No. What's the problem you're trying to solve? What's your data strategy? What's your business strategy? And how does this fall apart a bit? So it's that. I suppose it's those companies that have magpie syndrome, perhaps, and those partnerships are not going to work. That project isn't going to work, right?
If I may, I think there's a bit of a Donald Rumsfeld type of conundrum here, where there's things you know, there's things you know that you don't know, and there's things you don't know that you don't know. I think there's a large part of there's the responsibility people need to stand up to and take this thing seriously. It's not just about security and data, but it's also the privacy element that I was trying to highlight, is that when people see certain things, they're like, I need that. I didn't realize I needed that, but I know I need that. And I think it's up to us as a industry to be able to find those opportunities to tell people about it.
Yeah, I agree with that. I was going to mention about the GDPR point, or rather the way people come along and poorly specify what they need. Mm-hmm. So I at least once a day have a conversation with a potential customer who says, does your product make me GDPR compliant? And it's like, well, what do you mean by that? And they're like, well, I've got a tick box I have to tick. I have to be GDPR compliant. I've been told by the legal team. So does your product do that for me? No, it really doesn't, actually. We can help in terms of, once you work out what your GDPR program is, we can help support that and whatever else. But again, having a customer come to me and say, actually, here are my 10 problems. I've thought about them and my greatest risks. I've done a risk modeling, I've done some threat program, and here are the things I need to fix. Which of these 10 can you do? And I'll tell them I can do 3, and that's it. But they're a really important 3 for that business. That is the ideal customer for me.
I'm just going to add, I hope everybody is as honest as you, Matt, because a lot of salespeople would have said yes.
I'm not a salesperson.
No, I know. Thankfully. That's why you're here tonight. Any more questions?
Yeah, I'll just take your comments.
Just wondering, does the security industry in general have any membership organisations through which you would collectively think about what government regulations might be helpful and lobby government for such kinds of laws? Because car insurance is legally required as well as being sold, so I was wondering.
That's a good question. I don't know the short answer to that, but there's something that we're doing, and at Mount Schehallien, which is the parent company of Spy Curtains, is we're going to be setting up a campaign for 2020, which we want to try and have it known as the Year of Privacy, just to try and up the general population, the general public's knowledge about these sorts of matters. So it's not just a corporate thing, it's not just for professionals, but it's for individual citizens. So that's something that we're talking to government about, and we're looking for that kind of broad church, if you will. So in terms of the actual specific thing, that there's any kind of lobbying firms, I don't know. That would be interesting to know if you guys know, but it's something that we're thinking about, and we're wanting to try and at least do a bit of
There's a
this.
reason why that's really hard to do, or maybe it's possible, but the industry hasn't clicked on that.
Yeah, perhaps just because it's hard, I think maybe it makes it more necessary.
Government needs help anyway.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think there's a huge amount of things going on, especially in Scotland, actually. The government are doing a lot for cybersecurity. I don't know if that white paper is out yet. Obviously, there's GDPR, there's cyber essentials, there's lots of kind of things that are trying to give businesses more understanding of the things they need to do. But in terms of a sort of one-stop shop, not really. There's a lot in the community aspect of trying to actually bring a lot of groups together, whether that's government, private business, public sector, to have those conversations. So I think it is happening. There's so many problems to solve in cybersecurity or the security as a whole. I don't know if what you're talking about will ever kind of happen. But I think it's a two-way thing. So I think businesses are putting pressure on the government, and the government's putting pressure on businesses, so that we're not having to deal with a lot of these things. But it has to be a combined effort. I think OWASP is the interesting one for me from an application security point of view, because it's a worldwide organisation of open source communities trying to solve particular problems. It's just not being done at any kind of government level, I guess. So the answer is there's a lot going on, but I don't know how far it's...
Yeah, I think greater accreditation and standards are coming. So, and it's been interesting with cyber essentials, and government saying you're going to have this as a minimum, and then you've got ISO and sort of almost that tiered approach above it. But I think it needs to be simplified. It'd be great if we could look at what's happening in the food industry, and we just say, okay, this is really complicated, but just give us something really simple. This is high risk red, and this is green for go. So I think there's much more coming, but it's always that struggle with regulation or standards and what the government are doing and actually catching up with the reality. So it needs to be both ways, and you can't.
As we're talking about, evolves so quickly.
Exactly.
Catch up's just not going.
Yeah, I mean, just to add to that, so I worked for Capital One for a little while, and in the US, they're a fully cloud business, like they're fully in Amazon, and they're the first big financial services to do that, and they actually advise the regulators rather than regulators advising Capital One, because they're moving at such faster pace than the regulators are able to do. So we're in that world where the very bodies that we talk about are actually so slow, or maybe it's just because our industry is moving so fast, that it's the businesses driving the regulation, not the other way around.
Yeah. But it's great, isn't it, that that's happening, and that there's a two-way stream rather than just trying to dodge the regulation and fight against each other. So that can evolve to actually parties working together. I think that's very cool.
Yeah, just one last point on that. I just come back again about individual responsibility and the fact that people need to understand about these things rather than looking to centralised bodies that might be able to tell them what to do. You know, there's no Santa Claus, and we all have to take our own responsibility. I think that's the only sure thing about the future is that things are going to change so rapidly, and if you're not keeping up to date with it yourself, then you're going to be left behind. Okay, I'm going to add to that.
So, I have not a lot new to add other than I think that's it. When consumers themselves start turning around to businesses and turning down business because the business in question doesn't have a certain certification or hasn't demonstrated that it is secure or has in the past leaked records, that's when things are going to change. So when we start turning around to car insurance companies or whomever and say, actually, I'm not going to take insurance with you because I don't trust you anymore, that's when things are going to shift.
Great, thank you guys. Any last questions, sir?
Yeah.
I don't know where a second mic is. Thanks, Andrea.
On that subject, I heard a lot about GDPR mainly being about compliance. Compliance is the compliance is the requirements rather than that having security integrated in the product is the requirements. Being in between the product and security, how do you prioritize security when it comes to not just ticking the box for compliance, because that's really easy, you need to do that, but actually having that integrated and having that the availability for your end users to have that control over their privacy and making sure that security is there to a standard that they are aware of. How do you integrate that into a product? It seems really hard to sell from a product point of view.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's largely a marketing problem, isn't it? I think there's a bit of a design thinking is needed there in terms of how you're going to get your. I think it's overly complicated security. And certainly, what you're trying to do is very interesting and simplify to make it very tangible. I think more of that needs to happen. I think the notion is to. You said something about the food industry. I like that image in my mind of how much fat or carbs is in something. I think there's a design problem here with the security industry, and from where we started is looking at some of these sort of privacy tools. It's a very geeky thing, there's camera blockers already, but we've taken it a step further and added new products to that mix. But it's either you're a geek or you're paranoid, right? But actually, this is the way the world's moving now, and we all have to start taking responsibility for it. So how can you encourage people? How can you demonstrate that? I think that's largely a marketing issue.
One of the phrases I use publicly and in the businesses I work for is compliance is not security. They are two very different things.
Yes.
And I think that I would say compliance is an addition to security, actually. So compliance can help you do some of the right things. If it's the first thing that you're doing, fine, it will get you some of the way to where you need to be, but there should be lots of other things you should be considering from a security point of view as well. And this is where people much more knowledgeable in the industry than me are trying to actually advise businesses that it's not just that tick box exercise. You may have legal obligations that you need to fulfill, and that's fair enough, but again, a lot of these kind of regulations are out of date the moment they're put on paper. So you need to be considering other things. Grab a beer with me at some point about PCI, and I'll tell you how much I can see why it's doing good things to try and help companies do some of the baseline stuff, but it can't just be that tick. We've done it for the year. We now don't do anything else, because I think that's dangerous as well.
Yeah, I think we now need to change the conversation away from GDPR. I mean, of course I use it because if people know what it is. But this is not where I come from it and thinking. I'm bringing together privacy, digital business, marketing, all that stuff, because it's focusing on the personal data, the person's data, and where does it flow. So you're touching all of the operations. So people know what that means, and it gives it a nice framework. But it's all the same stuff that I was talking about for years on digital transformation. I got sick of the word, the phrase digital transformation. I get sick of the word GDPR because it comes all to the same thing, that you want to build a modern business, you want to have good capability, you want to build trust, it's all that stuff behind it. So these things are kind of the prism through which to see things. I think GDPR is super important because it's surprising / shocking how many businesses were just not even doing the basics. So it's I think it's helpful. Yes, inevitably it's out of date, but we can't expect anything else from the regulators. So that's why it's I think you still kind of if you look at the principles of it, it's still really relevant. Is that useful? But all of this for me, and just like the conversation earlier, it all comes back to brand. So I, having worked in brand, worked briefly in information security and marketing, that these guys need to get together because what you're doing is supporting the brand. So as you see that stuff aligning now, as you see it coming together, I think we're starting to have a bit, a change in the way the stuff is being thought of. So, maybe privacy by design is a good way of phrasing it just now. Maybe that turns to a different phrase in a year's time, who knows?
One of the big things, I think there's going to be market-driven forces at work here as well. One of the big things that people are very becoming more and more cognizant about is just talking in earshot of their mobile device, and next thing they're getting advertised to on Facebook or Google about things that they're having a conversation about. So you have a situation where the major platforms are constantly listening in through your devices, and that's, maybe it's just me, but I don't think that's necessarily too bad. Selling you products and services that you might be interested in, but that's a private company. It starts to get really a bit weird when state actors and governments start to listen in, and with Edward Snowden and these types of guys, saying that these things are already happening. That's when it becomes very, very much more scary, because governments and state actors have force at their disposal, either individually or collectively, and that becomes very dangerous. It's a slippery slope. So I think you're going to start seeing a lot more things taking place in the media of this kind of nature, and people are going to start feeling compelled to take notice and be responsible for their own privacy and security.
Great. I think we're just finished, unless anyone has a burning question that they can't hold on to. No, I think we're done. So I'm going to hand back to Russell to wrap up. If that's okay.